Structure and Sources in Humanities Dissertations. Tips and tricks for succeeding. My name is Steph Bennett. I'm a learning development tutor here in the Hub. Today's aims: to develop knowledge and understanding of gathering, arranging and applying resources to your academic writing. We will look at research, sources, structure, peel and some tips for moving forward. So let's get thinking. Have you started planning for your dissertation? What topic will you be exploring? And why have you chosen it? What do you hope to get out of your dissertation? Pause the video for 3 minutes, take some time to reflect and jot down your ideas. Getting it just right. Choosing a dissertation topic isn't easy. There's so much to select from, so many things that you've studied, so many things you might be interested in. So think more broadly about a topic and then narrow it down to your niche, but don't go too narrow. Take the Goldilocks approach, you're getting it just right. Select a topic that is interesting to you, select something different. Select something plausible within the time frame you've been given to complete a dissertation. And if you're really stuck, seek your tutor's guidance. When I did my humanities dissertation, I'd recently taken an interest in the latter half of the 1960s, in particular the homology between LSD and acid rock music. And I was really interested in subculture, and that's the kind of approach that I went down for my own dissertation, looking at the subculture and style of the latter half of the 1960s. Gathering and organising. Researching with a purpose. When approaching research for your dissertation, consider what your question is, what you need to answer this question, how you'll get this information, and the next steps. Start with general reading to get the big picture. That might be the background contextual information. Start to formulate your argument. What do you then want to say off the back of the contextual information you've read? Focus your reading. Think about some points that you want to make that are more specific and dive into those more deeply. Create a plan. Start plotting and designing the structure of your dissertation. Add to your plan. Make the draft more meaningful, more purposeful. Continue reading to fill in the gaps of your draft. And edit your work. Proofread, then edit again before your submission. And that might seem really simple when it's laid out in 7 steps, but there's actually a lot more to it than that. So let's have a look. Working with sources. Primary sources form the basis of your investigation. For my humanities dissertation, the primary sources I looked at were score sheets and songs. They help you to explain and analyse. You need to examine those primary sources and then evaluate them critically. You need to consider the wider implications of those primary sources. Secondary sources then, they explore different interpretations. For example, I looked at Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix through the lens of Sheila Whiteley, a popular music researcher who focused on psychedelic coding, which is a way to break down and analyse the music of the latter half of the 1960s. Secondary sources think critically about the primary sources, and it also gives you a chance to think critically as well. For example, I might have thought, well, why does Sheila Whiteley put that argument forward? What's significant about it? What does that tell me about the primary source? Do I have any other interpretations? Secondary sources always provide that additional bit of support, help you to better understand the primary sources. And they help to position yourself within the field. So let's get thinking then. We need to be locating primary sources and secondary sources. So, if we're using Google Scholar, if we're using WorldCat, what Boolean search terms do we have linked to our topic? Can you write down 10 Boolean search terms? Pause the video for 3 minutes, have a bit of reflection and jot down your ideas. Right, I'm just going to show you a quick Boolean search that I did as part of my dissertation. No, it doesn't feature 10 Boolean search terms at all, it features 3. And here you can see is Google Scholar. you can see I have acid rock and psychedelic coding, and then a minus sign and cream, which is a band's name. What this Boolean search term means is that I'm looking at acid rock and psychedelic coding, but I don't want to look at anything on the band cream. The word not doesn't work in Google Scholar. We have to use the minus sign. So let's click search. And here you go. Here are the results from that search. And in fact, the first article speaks to me in terms of my dissertation. And you can see it is quite clearly tied into the focus and purpose of my own dissertation. Now, once we've located a selection of sources, let's think about the challenges of these sources. As we're reading, are they biased? Whose voice is missing? Is there a lack of sources for your investigation? You can see in my last Boolean search, only 9 sources popped up, which means I'd probably have to have a look at WorldCat and maybe also search in the library. Is there information missing from the sources you're reading? Are they propaganda? Are they misleading in nature? That might be more evident with political or historical based sources. These questions here can actually form a part of your source analysis, as can the crack test. You're thinking about the currency of the information. Did we once view something in one way, and now we view it in another way? And then our dissertation will look at why those viewpoints changed. What about the relevancy of the material? How relevant is the source for your needs? What about the authority of the author? How renowned is that author in the field? Therefore, how viable is the information they are feeding? They might have also produced other books or other journal articles that you can look to that will feed into your dissertation as well. What about the accuracy of the information presented? What information are the authors that you're reading drawing on? What evidence do they have to back up their arguments? And finally, purpose. And this ties in with that element of bias that we looked at. For what reason does that source exist? Is it to persuade you in some way? Is it to entertain you in some way or inform you in some way? Then you need to think about documenting your findings from literature, and you might want to use Tom Chatfield's reading table for this. Down the left-hand side, you can see a bunch of critical questions you need to ask of your text, and the following columns are related to the sources at the top, which, as you can see, are not actually real sources. This is a really great reading table because you can actually use the full reference at the top to place into your reference list at the end. It just helps to keep all the information in one space. With your sources, you can think about the topic being addressed, the author's overall argument, the reasoning they've used to come to that argument, the evidence that they've used to develop their reasoning to come to that overall argument. You need to think about how convincing that argument actually is, any follow-up questions that you have once you've read the source, and any direct quotations you might want to use in your work. These might be actual direct quotations from primary sources or even paraphrases of secondary sources. This is available on the Learning Development Blackboard course under the section Academic Reading. Arranging and planning. So we've searched for our sources, we've read our sources. The reading doesn't stop there, by the way, it continues right the way to the end. But we need to start arranging and planning and structuring and drafting, etc. How do I create a structure? What is the answer to your question? You might already know that, having done some reading. How will you convey this to the reader? What sections will you need? How will you fit everything together? Humanities dissertations are often presented as long essays. They explore discussions from previous literature and case study examples. So for my dissertation, I had an introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and a conclusion. And here is an example. Your overarching argument and thesis, or the answer to your question that you've laid out, will go at the start. You'll have these chapters, or sub-themes you might want to call them, coming off of that. And that might be broken down into 4 sub-themes, or even paragraphs. And here is an example. Your dissertation question might be, how far did attitudes towards the personal computer change in the US between 1960 and 1990? Your overall argument might be, attitudes became more positive, but were still countered by technological anxieties. So chapter 1 would be on pre-revolution attitudes to technology. Chapter 2 will be about fears about computers. And finally, chapter 3 will encompass more of a moving forward aspect, increasing positivity in response to computers. Introductions then, what to include? Well, they engage the reader in the topic, so you need a hook sentence immediately to draw them in, to appetise, to delight, to grab their attention. It sets out your historical question. It explains why, in terms of why you've chosen this period, why you've chosen this theme, and why you've decided to draw on these particular sources. It also looks at why the topic is significant, and that might be to do with offering a present-day perspective, knowing what we know now about the subject. It might outline whose works you are drawing on. For example, in mine it was very clear that I was going to be looking specifically at Hendrix and the Beatles, and I clearly outlined their specific pieces I was going to be drawing on. It'll also look at how you will contribute to the existing body of literature, the existing narrative and discourse around the topic. Your chapters will obviously be broken down into sub-themes, but you will be using peel paragraphs within those sub-themes to lay out your logical narrative. Make a point clearly and explicitly. Look to the literature to back it up. What sources will you be drawing on? Primary, secondary? Will there be theories in there? Will there be case studies? Will there be stats and data? Then you need to thoroughly explain this evidence. What is it telling you about that topic? What's interesting about it? Are there any strengths and limitations to the theory or idea you're looking at? If you've chosen to focus on a primary source in your evidence, can you draw on the secondary source in the explanation? Hence why I've written, use the literature. And then wrap everything up at the end. Make sure your link sentence links back to the dissertation topic and also alludes to further points. And here is an example. In this example, both the primary and secondary evidence are succinctly critiqued within the explanation, and they're bundled together within the evidence. We haven't got the primary and then the secondary separately, and this demonstrates an integrated approach to critical writing. So if you'd like to, you can pause the video and have a read of this. Let's get thinking again. Can you put these peel statements in order? Take 4 minutes and pause the video. Here we go. Now place them in a logical peel order. Did you get it right? And let's look at writing conclusions. You start your conclusion by returning to your overall argument. What did you set out to argue and why? As in, what is the answer to your research question? Then you need to summarise the core arguments and reiterate their significance in relation to answering that research question, as in support of that thesis you started out with. You might have identified some new areas for research or exploration through your study, so highlight those. And finally, tie up by thinking about the implications of your argument. What does your narrative tell us? And finally, some tips for moving forward. You don't have to start at the beginning, find a pathway that suits you. If you want to start at chapter 2, start at chapter 2. Break down tasks into manageable chunks, find a routine and a flow. I like to do 200 words a day. Take time away from your work to remain objective. Remember, you're always thinking about what is the big picture. Work to your strengths, choose an area that interests you to maintain focus because you're going to be doing a lot of reading and a lot of writing on the topic. I was very fortunate because I got to listen to a lot of The Beatles, which is exactly what I wanted to do. Proofread and edit as you go, but save extra time at the end for this. Motivation. Plan your time effectively. Don't forget to leave time for play. It's really important. And if you're struggling with this, watch the Coping with Stress video. Be flexible to changes. There are things that are going to stump you and come up along the way. For example, there are days where I can't write 200 words a day, so I have to be flexible and add the 200 to an extra day where I'll write 400. Don't compare yourself to others. You are on your own path. And I know this is really hard with dissertations. Some people will be flying ahead, some people will be further behind you. You're on your own journey. And if you need any support, book in with learning development, digital learning, the library, or even student advice and well-being. And finally, resources. Check the Learning Development Blackboard. If you're stuck for sentence starters, head to Academic Phrase Bank. And don't forget, for citing and referencing in APA 7th, head to the Academic Integrity Guide on Blackboard. And if you have any questions or suggestions, you can get in touch with me at stephanie.bennett@lincolnbishop.ac.uk.